Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar Beyond the Bin, Rethinking and Addressing Plastic Waste. My name is Maria Iturbide-Chang, and I serve as the Water Policy Director at the Hoosier Environmental Council. And today I'll be the moderator for this event. I'm excited to share that we had around 500 people register for this webinar, which shows just how much interest and urgency there is around this issue. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors whose support made this event possible. Plastic waste is one of the most pressing environmental challenges of our time. Globally, we produce over 400 million tons of plastic each year, and more than 7 million tons end up in our oceans annually. Here in the US, only about 5 and 6% of plastics are recycled, meaning most of it goes to landfills, incineration, or enters our waterways, posing serious risks to ecosystems, communities, and health. Today, we are fortunate to hear and learn from three excellent professionals who will share valuable insights and data about this issue, information that will open our eyes to the true scale of the problem and inspire us to think our relationship with plastic. Just a few housekeeping notes. During each presentation, you can type your questions directly into the Q&A chat box. Our speakers will be actively responding to your questions throughout the session. We'll also leave time for additional Q&A at the end of the session. This session is being recorded and we'll share the link afterwards. And finally, please take a couple of minutes after the event to complete our survey. Your feedback is very important to us and it helps shape future webinars. So let's dive in. I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Professor Linda Wang. So she is Drs. Norman and Jane Lee Professor of Chemical Engineer at Purdue University Davidson School of Chemical Engineer. She is internationally recognized for her groundbreaking work in chemical and biochemical conversions and purifications with real applications ranging from recycling plastics to clean energy innovations. We are thrilled to have her with us today. Dr. Wang, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. So I'm excited to tell you what I've been concerned about for the last decade. Where are we going with 7 billion tons of plastic waste? So I'll give you my perspective of this plastic pollution problem. And I have three open questions for everyone. The first one is, will the planet be inhabitable in 2050? Second, can we afford to clean up the oceans and landfills? And third, can we save the planet in time? And I'll share you very modest contributions from Purdue about low pressure hydrothermal processing for converting plastic waste to oils or fuels to achieve a circular economy. And this was chosen as the cover story of the most recent Royal Society of Chemistry sustainability, the cover story. And most importantly, what are we going to do? So some of you may know that since the invention of the plastics in the 40s, and in the 70s, we started to be addicted to single-use plastics. As a result, this curve accumulated plastic waste on Earth is growing exponentially. Up to date, there's 7 billion tons in landfills and scattered all over the place. And on average, some are incinerated, 12%, this is a global average, and global average about 9% recycled. As Maria indicated, in the US is even smaller than this amount. And most concerning is the 3% went to the oceans. So I'll tell you what I think about the consequences of this accumulating plastic waste. So far, landfilling, incineration, mechanical recycling have not been effective in reducing this accumulated amount of plastic waste. And this plastic waste degrades over centuries. So releasing microplastics everywhere, and at the same time releasing about 16,000 disclosed chemicals during the plastic waste manufacturing process. And I'll show you some of my own analysis about this. Cleaning up the oceans, you require 10,000 times the global GDP. I'll share you my calculations later. Some of you probably have noticed about the giant Texas-sized garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. These are two big garbage patches. And so in 2019, the deepest dive into the Mariana Trench, 36,000 feet deep, the biologists didn't find any exotic organisms, but a plastic bag. This doesn't work. No. So, this is a coral reef. You can see a plastic bottle in this coral reef causing the disease states of the reefs. And microplastics are found in the snows close to the peak of the Mount Everest. And you can find plastic and microplastics everywhere, from the Alps to the Arctic oceans. So degrading slowly. This is the 2017 pictures of the Arctic ocean floor, the plastic waste, and microplastics, the Arctic ice in 2019. And what is the consequence of these? So you can see that you can see the plastic with the beach sand, sea salts, fish in California, seabirds in Europe. A large portion of them have plastic microplastics and killing, seabirds and marine mammals every year, but that's only a small part of the problem. Pretty soon you see that these plastic waste and their degradation process ended in consumer plates. So worse yet, the landfill, the plastics, they're now perfect and seeping into the groundwater and polluting the soil and plants. And microplastics have been found in human lungs and in placenta, and the babies are drinking this plastic from the plastic bottle, ingesting about millions of microplastics every day. So, this you probably have noticed in the news. 94% of the bottled waters contain microplastics. This was reported 2023. Microplastics found in human brains, lungs, liver, placenta, intestines tests in the last year. And millions more Americans are being exposed to PFAS. This is the degradation products of Teflon in August this year. And however, only 2% of the thousands of PFAS chemicals were tested in this test. And 83% of the waterways and drinking water tested across 34 states have PFAS. And the 4 parts per trillion level of the PFAS was shown to have toxic effects on cells. And according to the International Agency of Cancer Research, PFAS was considered group 1 carcinogens. And they're linked to kidney cancer, testicular cancer, thyroid disease, etc. And Professor Peasley from Notre Dame commented that the cleanup of the PFAS will be most expensive cleanup in the U.S. yet to face. However, I think he was not concerned that all the other plastic waste and their chemicals released in the environment. So the second important question is, can we clean up the oceans, the rivers, and landfills in time? So my calculations show that it will take $1 a kilogram to retrieve the plastic waste from landfills, which on average contain about 14% plastic waste. And however, the chemical producers are producing virgin plastics at less than this cost. So if you take 7 billion tons, assuming they're neatly accumulated in landfills, that's $7 trillion just to clean up the landfills. The worst is the ocean, okay? My experience in water treatment is having this estimate about 0.3 cents per gallon. However, to treat 3.5 times 10 to the 20 gallons of ocean water, And this will cost about 10 to the 18th dollars. Okay, this is 10,000 times the global GDP. Many countries are arguing about 1% GDP to treat for environmental protection in total. So this number tells me that it's very unlikely we can afford this. So, so is this irreversible damage to our ecosystem? That's the question. And I think this pollution inevitably will impact on water, food supplies, and eventually human health. So limitations of the current ways of handling the plastic waste, mostly landfills, 76%. There's no energy return and causing environmental pollution because the landfills are not perfect and they contaminate the groundwater beneath it, and then eventually going to the rivers and going to the oceans. Incineration has provided very low energy return, and most of the people are worried about climate change and the high greenhouse gas emissions from the incineration. As a result, the permits for incineration are very limited and very high tipping fees, so therefore it's not very commonly used. Mechanical recycling, the water bottles are mostly recycled, mechanical recycled. However, you can only recycle this thing 8 times. Eventually, they're landfilled because the polymer properties degrade upon recycling. So eventually it becomes going to the landfill. Pyrolysis has a very limited impact because it has produce a lot of char and oil yields are low. So all this have not been effective in curbing that exponential growth curve of the accumulated plastic waste. So will the planet inhabitable in 2050? I think, the way we're going, we have more plastics than fish in the oceans. So Stephen Hawking, before he passed away in 2017, he made a prophecy that humanity has only 100 years left to leave Earth or perish. And his analysis are based on 4 factors: global warming, overpopulation, pandemics, nuclear war. And however, unfortunately, he was not aware of the scope of the plastic pollution problem. So my question to everyone is, do we have 100 years left? So the third question is, can we save the planet in time? So potential solutions that, in my view, is if industry can process the plastic waste into useful products, but they need profit. Okay, so new technology needs to be profitable and with smaller environmental footprint, and to achieve a sustainable circular use of materials beyond, helping with the plastic pollution problem. So we have our very modest recent, effort is converting, for example, assorted polystyrene can be processed in the continuous reactor at the low pressure with about 400 degrees Celsius. 2 minutes, this will become oil, which with very little char and gas formation, and this oil can be a large portion of styrene monomers, styrene dimers, styrene trimer. And this styrene dimers and trimer can be converted to monomers. And this, as a result, we can make a polystyrene plastics if possible. And this was chosen as the cover story just this year in this journal. So we have also advanced technologies converting type 2, 4, and 5, which is about 70% of the total plastic waste. Instead of going to landfills and incinerations or oceans, we can change that trajectory into this process. We have a multi-stage condensation to separate the oils into a diesel fraction and a gasoline fraction. This can be reused as fuels. And the crude oil can also be sent to refinery and to purify it and do a chemical synthesis again. So this technology, unfortunately, is only at lab scale so far. But it has a potential to reduce energy use and greenhouse gas emissions and reduce the plastic waste accumulation. and reduce microplastics, in the food and water supplies, and hopefully reduce the health impacts if it's scaled up into large-scale production. So at the best case, if we can convert the 70% of the plastic waste into oils or fuels, then we can recover annually about $100 billion of oils or fuels. And we can reduce the CO2 emission by 1 to 6 tons of plastic waste converted. And we can reduce crude oil consumption for fuel or for chemical synthesis. And we can achieve circular use of materials and reduce the risk of plastic pollution on the environment and human health. So the third question is, can we save the planet in time? This is still an open question. Okay, so many years ago, we thought there should be some laws because everybody is responsible for this mess, but nobody's legally responsible. So there are some efforts in the United Nations level. There's a committee formed, and the goal is to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, including the marine environment. And for 3 years, the last discussion was in August 2025 in Geneva, Switzerland, but there's no action or no success yet. And the treaty, the negotiations were undermined by corporate interests, and this discussion still will be extended and ongoing. So can we save the planet in time? The third question. I think the first problem is we must have public awareness of the extent of this plastic pollution problem. And if possible, replace with natural materials and reduce the use of single-use plastics or plastic products in general. And if you have to use it, you have to make effort to recycle this. And we must increase the collection rate from the less than 10%, as Maria mentioned, 6% in the US, to greater than 80%, to save the planet in time, in my view. Do not mix plastics with trash. If you have assorted plastics, it gives the industry a chance to convert them into useful products or reuse them, convert into oils and reuse. And if you mix them with trash, as I said, it cannot make anything out of it with profit, except with very high cost to control the ground pollution in the landfills. And as I've shown, the single sorted polystyrene can be can be processed very quickly, economically, into monomers again to make polystyrene again. And to achieve the circular use of materials is part of the solution, in my view. And we must have some public policy and laws or incentives for reducing the plastic waste. In Davos, I heard the plastic industry were very concerned about the net zero carbon credit. So I immediately proposed that we should have a net zero plastic pollution credit for the plastic producers, if it can be, it can be enforced as laws. And the deposits from consumers and, reverse vending machine, and this I came up with 10 years ago, but it's not going. I saw one in Massachusetts. So when you get a plastic water bottle from a vending machine, you can return the plastic bottle to a reverse vending machine to collect the water bottle after use. We must increase the infrastructure for sorted plastic waste collection and processing because, if the infrastructure is not there, consumers cannot do any recycling. And so the most promising sign I heard was that in Taipei, Taiwan, they have sorted the plastic waste from the household into 6 categories, glass, metal, paper, plastic waste, and kitchen waste. And the rest is called garbage. And the consumers are charged for the garbage they produce. So this reduced in Taipei, Taiwan, in 1 year, reduced the the garbage, non-recyclable things by 2/3 in 1 year. So I thought that that's something we can consider. I'm trying to ask any other opinions from all of you. What are the other opinions, other ideas can help with this problem? So thank you for your attention and thank you for listening to me. And I will be happy to answer any questions if I have time.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Very interesting and very true about all the problems and dangers that we have with saving the planet on time. There is an interesting question here. It says, let me, it says your data shows that we could generate 100 billion annually to reprocess 70% of plastic waste. What would this cost to establish such a global reuse system?
Can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear from my microphone.
That's okay.
The
Your
last sentence.
Yeah, so it says your data shows that we could generate 100 billion annually to reprocess 70% of plastic waste. What
Yes.
would this cost to establish such a global reuse system?
I see. What it will cost. Yeah, this is a very optimistic projection on the global scale. Okay, so we can convert them in the worst case if it's depending is it sorted or is mixed. If you have type 2, 4, 5, and 6 mixed, we can use the technology to convert them into oil, and then the two-stage condenser will separate into diesel fuel and gasoline fuel. If you have a single sorted polystyrene, then we can try to reduce into monomers to make polystyrene again. So this is really a very optimistic projection. This just shows the potential of this. Our technology is only at the very small lab scale. The reactor is limited by the walk-in hood size of the lab. So from this stage to, we'll say, technology readiness level 3, to go to a pilot scale, that will take, $1 million or a few $1 million at least. And one single pilot plant, scale this up 1,000 times. And then, you have a first commercial plant, that was estimated, to be, in the tens of millions of dollars to process a significant amount of the city waste. So to implement that globally, that's still, a long way to go. And so this is I'm just trying to motivate people that, there is a way of converting plastic waste into use for products. However, we have to collect them first, right? If we collect only 6%, this is not going to help very much. So there are multiple scales of the problems. But I've been struggling, trying to find research funding to go from the lab scale to the pilot scale. So from technology readiness level 3 to 8 or 9, that would take at least $1 million to go to that for the first pilot scale, and so on and so forth.
Thank
So
you.
it's a long way to go.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. And there are so many other questions that maybe you can help us answering them in the chat box as well.
Yes.
Thank you
Okay.
very
Later
much.
on. Thank you.
And we go with our second speaker is Dr. Julie Peller. She's professor of chemistry at Valparaiso University and visiting scholar at the University of Notre Dame's Radiation Laboratory. Dr. Peller also leads important community-based work, collaborating with scientists, policy experts, and local leaders through the Northern Lake County Environmental Partnership to address pollution and advance environmental justice. She is also the co-founder of the nonprofit Plastic Reduction Alliance, dedicated to raising awareness and driving solutions to plastic pollution. We are excited to hear your insights today. Dr. Peller, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Um, I am going to focus more on the issue of micro and nanoplastics, which Dr. Wang did a great job of just relaying how ubiquitous these are. I mean, we're talking from the bottom of the ocean to the top of the mountains. So we find these everywhere. And so I'm going to go ahead and also just reemphasize her earlier graph about where we're at with plastic production and where the projection is for us a few decades ahead, which to me is horrifying. This is something that we need to address, and I would say push back very hard against this as the United Nations describes our plastic problem as part of a triple planetary crisis. And they also indicate this is because of decades of overuse. And so when we think about overuse, there are ways to address this. If we're overusing these, why don't we step back and think about using less? So the reality is that our plastic materials fragment into smaller pieces. They become what we either define as microplastics or nanoplastics. Microplastics are from about 5 millimeters in diameter down to about a micrometer. So the lower end of that are in the region that we can no longer see them. And then with all the nanoplastics, these the human eye cannot detect. What we are realizing, though, is that they have effects on human health. This whole process of the plastics breaking down, I guess for a long time, I never really thought about them, even though a lot of the plastic material that I would purchase had a tendency to break a lot easier and faster than other materials. So this slide is just kind of showing how here's our plastic materials, and we often forget about the fact that our carpeting and so many of our fabrics now are made of plastic in addition to our clothing. And so these release plastics all the time. Those often are the ones that we can't see unless we have large amounts of them. So these, the middle picture is showing what we've collected at the shore of Lake Michigan. Up here in Valpo, we're close to the southern shoreline of Lake Michigan. And from these, we get even very smaller ones. And so you can see a series of smaller plastics here, and then outside the little vials, everything else is a microscope image. I want to share with you a little bit, since Dr. Wang got to share her research, I want to share just a little bit of my research with you too, where we've found that you can also end up with these really small microscopic microplastics and nanoplastics in ways that we hadn't thought of before. So on the left side of this slide, we have what might look to you more like a snow globe, where we have polyethylene microplastics. Obviously, the ones are big enough for us to see in water. And of course, I was always under the impression that these don't mix with water. Well, when you have a small amount of other liquid in there, so I'm talking about a fraction of a drop, and I'm going to tell you that it would be something similar to kerosene, a fraction of a drop of kerosene, and you mix it up, shake it up really well, you get the cloudiness that you see in the next vials. We were very surprised to see this, thinking, okay, well, wait a minute, what's happened here? And we took some of that cloudy water, we imaged it, and you can see the picture below of what those particles looked like on the micrometer scale. We removed the rest of the solid, evaporated the water, the liquid from there, and you can see the vial that shows the residue at the bottom. And in fact, that was polyethylene. What happened here was plastic mixed with water. And we were very surprised about this. We did this with a whole bunch of different plastics and we published this. So my question to everybody is, how often do you take a water-based substance in a plastic container and shake it up really well? Because I can tell you, you're probably creating a lot of these nanoplastics and small microplastics in there. And in fact, later, so we published in 2022, in early, I think it was 2024, there was a very good study. There were a number of them prior to this, but to me, this is one of the best ones that's come out about bottled water that indicates that for every liter of bottled water that we consume about 250,000 plastic particles. And our work with water has shown, you can see the images on the right, the microscope images, that in fact, our water does contain a lot of these particles now. So I found this picture online and just to kind of think about, all right, how we obviously can get exposed through drinking water. Also through our foods that contain micro and nanoplastics. But in addition to that, we inhale a lot of air where we have a lot of these invisible microplastics and nanoplastics. And there's also evidence that shows that we can have exposures through dermal contact and also the placenta. So what does this really mean for human health? And we're starting to find out. I think we're just at the cusp of this. The health effects come from not just the particles themselves, but I want to back up for just a minute. The health effects come from plastic production and plastic waste. And there's a great documentary out there, it's a few years old now, called The Story of Plastic that depicts this very nicely. And as Dr. Wang indicated, there are thousands of different chemicals that are in plastics that we don't have to be told about. The industry doesn't have to tell us what they've put in there. And these are also released in addition to the particles under different conditions. So we have sort of this different multitude ways that this can be affecting human health in addition to the micro and nanoplastics. The message is now coming from the scientific experts are this is of concern. Dr. Wang indicated she and I met at a conference in Switzerland, and one of the presenters, I had written down their statement here, we're transferring plastics to the unborn generation because we know it's going through the placenta now. So chemicals leach from plastic into food and dust, widely found in pregnant women, infants and children, passing to the fetus via the placenta and into the infants through both breast milk and formula. So we've gotten to the point where we were thinking, okay, what size do these, how small do these need to be before they can pass through these different biological barriers? And we're finding that, in fact, we have lots of penetration of these particles, interaction of them in the body. One of the doctors there, Dr. Agard, who's a maternal fetal specialist, she said that the accumulation of plastic, according to her studies, can be contributing to the risk and occurrence of preterm birth. So you can see one of the publications that reported on her work. So now just to give you a flavor of what's been coming out since about 2020, to me, this was one of the first studies that gained a lot of international attention, that microplastics were found in the placentas of pregnant women. They're found to cause damage to human cells, found in human blood, associated with Parkinson's disease and dementia, may be associated with obesity and weight gain as endocrine disruptors. And then a study that came out in the New England Journal of Medicine last year associating micro and nanoplastics with cardiovascular events. Again, blood pressure. And then the one that I'm going to speak a little bit more about, to me, this was a really groundbreaking study by researchers at the University of New Mexico about the accumulation of micro and nanoplastics in the human brain, where they studied the brains of deceased peoples. And so here are just a couple of the quotes from these researchers. They found what they called alarmingly high levels in human brains, and thinking that these may be obstructing blood flow. There's potential that these nanomaterials interfere with connections between axons in the brain. We just don't know yet. These tend to accumulate in fat cells in the brain. And again, not really knowing what this means, this outcome, but having pretty clear evidence that we have these particles now found in the brain. Their research suggested that we could have as much as 7 grams of plastic in brains of people living now, because we're exposed to much more plastic now than we were, say, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Even what they found from a brain less than a decade ago, they found that had the ones in 2024 had nearly 50% more microplastics than samples from 2016. After talking with the researchers and after getting an update on their work, they said they had analyze the frontal lobe of the brain, which tends to accumulate more plastic. And so this is probably an overestimate. But I don't know about you, even if it's, a fraction of this, that's still to me a little concerning. In addition to that, there have been lots of scientists, in this case, neuroscientists, that have been sounding the alarm for us, especially when it comes to our children. Our children are subjected and exposed to so many more plastics now than adults were. So I think that we need to pay really a real attention to what this means for the youth today. The scientists recognize the threat here. You heard from Dr. Wang. I'm trying to also put out the information. The media tells us this once and then kind of loses sight of it. But here's one publication that just came out from a number of scientists that tells us plastics are a grave, growing, and under-recognized danger to human and planetary health. Yet we continue to live as though there's no threat. And again, if we really care about our youth and future generations, we really need to address this. It's important to reduce plastic production so we don't see that trend that we showed in these graphs, and then limit exposures and just have a cleaner and healthier environment. When we were in Davos, Switzerland, that's one country where they're actually seeing a drop in the amount of plastic usage. And according to one of the researchers there, said that people really are starting to get it, and that's why that's happening. So I'm going to come back a little bit later and have a few words to say once we've finished up with our last speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peller. So many interesting questions here. There is one, it says, is there any plastic cup bottle that is safe?
You know what? That not all plastics are the same. Okay, some are definitely going to have the capacity to release more than others. And we've done a number of experiments that show differences. All of them release some fewer than others. Some release a lot. We find at higher temperatures, there's a much greater release. So yes, there is a difference.
Thank you so much. And we will have time for questions, hopefully, at the end of the session. Thank you so much. So our final speaker is Harshini Ratnayaka, the Manager of Government Affairs and Policy for Save the Dunes, one of the Northwest Indiana's oldest and most respected environmental organization. Harshini, thank you. The floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name's Harshini. As Maria said, I'm the policy contact here at Save the Dunes, and I'm here to talk to you about plastic pollution advocacy in Northwest Indiana, but also just across the entire state. Much of the presentation I'm going to show you is going to be applicable to the entire state of Indiana. So I always love starting with this picture on the right. So this is a picture of the Indiana Dunes National Park. This is specifically Mount Baldy. And I show it for two reasons. One, it's a great picture, but two, this plastic pollution problem will absolutely, unfortunately, affect our national park. And so I just want you to think about that when we start talking about some of the different advocacy initiatives that our organization does do with them. So, as I mentioned, we do advocacy in Save the Dunes, but we do it at a lot of different environmental issues and also at different levels. So we focus on the federal, state, and local level. And we've been doing it for more than 70 years. So we've been a leading force in protecting the unique natural heritage of Northwest Indiana. And as of a few months ago, we are now an official philanthropic partner of the Indiana Dunes National Park, where we work to advance shared goals in land preservation, habitat restoration, and public access to make sure that when you do come visit our national park in Northwest Indiana, that you're able to enjoy it and be safe while doing it, and that the national park remains clean. So I'm just going to quickly go over the different types of advocacy. As I mentioned, we do it at the federal, state, and local. So an example of our federal advocacy is specifically during Great Lakes Days, which is the first week of March. We go to DC with different community members from Northwest Indiana to advocate for bipartisan water policy issues. Of course, that includes the Clean Water Act and plastic pollution. So on the right there, that's a picture of our communications manager talking to Congressman Moran, who is our congressman up here in Northwest Indiana, who represents Lake Porter and LaPorte County. And at the state level, we also do a lot of advocacy. So the state session is coming up every single year. It comes up in the first couple of weeks, or sorry, first couple of months of each year. So just around the corner in 2026 from January to March. But when the session does happen, we do create a bill watch list. An example is one that you can see on the right. This is our 2025 state bill watch list, where we pick 10 House bills and 10 Senate bills to focus on. Of course, that will include plastic bills, such as ones that include PFAS or those forever chemicals, the ones that don't leave your system, don't leave your body. That was a huge discussion, especially during this State House session. We anticipate it being another discussion with next session in 2026. And as we speak, we are still discussing with local state representatives about how to incentivize plastic reduction in the state of Indiana. I know that we've mentioned in the chat a lot of different bills that unfortunately are harmful to our initiative to reduce plastics, specifically single-use plastic, but we do work with a lot of Indiana partners on this initiative as well. So I just want to start with a very basic question, particularly since us in Northwest Indiana are in the Great Lakes area. So I always start with this of how much plastic pollution in pounds ends up in the Great Lakes annually. And I know that some of the central Indiana or southern Indiana maybe have a different topography, but here in Northwest Indiana, we are a Great Lakes state. Indiana definitely is a Great Lakes state, and so this specific number from our partners at the Alliance of Great Lakes is always somewhere where I love to start because it's a huge, huge eye opener, I think, if you're just not aware. So according to their research, they found that nearly 22 million pounds, so that's 10,000 metric tons of plastic debris enter the Great Lakes every single year from both the US and Canada. So over half of this waste was from Lake Michigan. And unfortunately, that's the lake that we border. That's where our Lake Michigan beaches in Northwest Indiana are. So this was an alarming number. Unfortunately, of course, we do work with Alliance for the Great Lakes very closely to help advocate for this, as I mentioned, in DC. But I always think that this number is just alarming and also just like a very, very big number to keep in your heads when you're thinking about how to do advocacy around this issue. And so now I just want to go through some of the examples of microplastics and the types of sources that you can see with those. So as Julie and Linda mentioned, microplastics are these plastic particles that are less than 5 millimeters in diameter. But I think a lot of questions usually are around what exactly is a microplastic, or can you give me examples of them? And they're literally in everything. So those include soaps, synthetic clothing, textiles, styrofoam, degraded pieces of plastic litter, such as bottles and bags. And then the sources of those include, soap, scrubs, toothpaste, deodorant, shaving cream, and plastic pellets. So it is literally in everything, unfortunately. There's no way that you won't be exposed to it, which is definitely something that we try to highlight to the legislative offices as well, of just like, this is something that is in everyone, unfortunately. Everyone has been exposed to it, whether or not you know it. So I'm going to go through some single-use plastic and examples as well, just so we're kind of all on the same page. So when we're talking about these plastics that are meant to be thrown away after use, that's what we mean when we're talking about single-use plastics, the ones that you use once and you never use again. So these include food containers, such as when you're going and getting takeout food, any restaurant doggy bags and styrofoam containers, those also apply. When you're thinking about single-use plastic water bottles or soda or other drinks as well. Straws, so plastic straws for drinking, where you just use it once, and especially in takeout, and then you throw it away. Plastic cups for coffee and other drinks as well. So anything like that, which I'm sure we've all unfortunately had to use at least once or twice in our lives, would apply as a single-use plastic. So now I'm going to just switch over to some plastic pollution rather in legislation. So there was recently the Green Parks Plan. This was under the previous White House administration. before the change in 2025. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit about the new Executive Order 14208, which is currently under our new administration, our White House administration that started in 2025. And then I'm going to quickly just go over our state bill that was introduced this session, which is 1302. This was actually introduced by our state representative up here in Northwest Indiana, Pat Boy, and Representative Sue Arrington. So this specific state bill was a restriction on single-use food service items. It would have prohibited restaurants and food delivery services from providing the customers with the single-use food service items, which was great. And then a restaurant or third-party food delivery service would only provide a single-use plastic item or plastic straw or condiment if the customer actually asked for one. So instead of just giving it out to you, regardless of whether or not you ask for it, you would have to ask for it, which I think is really, really good. Unfortunately, this bill was killed this session, but I think it's good because we are understanding that at the State House and thinking about how to reduce single-use plastic. So I think the more that we're able to see bills like this get introduced, the better it is, so that we can kind of keep it on our legislative minds, especially when you're going into the State House session. And even right now, when the State House session is not really starting, but starting to have those conversations with your state representatives, your state senators is always a good idea. So I just want to give an example of plastic legislation at the State House this session. And as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about the Green Parks Plan a little bit more. So this specifically would have affected our Indiana Dunes National Park, and it did affect our Indiana Dunes National Park last White House administration. So this was something under the Biden administration that was introduced. This was really a vision for all the national parks in the U.S. to attain net zero status by reducing those greenhouse gas emissions, conserving energy and water, reduce solid waste, and really change to green transportation and really think about how in the national parks can we be more sustainable? Can we kind of be more green? So this affirmed the National Park Service's commitment to work towards phasing out single-use plastics in all of the national parks nationwide over the next couple of years. Unfortunately, with the change in the White House, this is no longer active as of January 2025. But it is really good to see that this was something that our national park, our Indiana Dunes National Park, was definitely working on. And hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll see that initiative take place again. Okay, so I'm going to talk about current executive order. So executive order for 14208. This is currently under our issued by our current White House. This says that agencies have to take appropriate action to eliminate policies designed to disfavor plastic straws. So the federal government is directed to stop purchasing paper straws and ensure that they're no longer provided within the federal building. So any agency building, you cannot have any paper straw. They're all plastic. The order also requires the development of a national strategy to end the use of paper straws. This was within that 45-day allocation to alleviate the forced use of paper straws nationwide. And so the reason given by the White House was that the paper straws use chemicals that may carry risks to human health, including those forever chemical PFAS, which are known to be highly water soluble and then can bleed from the straw into a drink. So that was kind of their reasoning for getting rid of all of the paper straws and switching back to plastic. We, of course, at our organization do kind of question that. We do really try and reduce our single-use plastic usage, and especially in our national parks with what's going on, we do try and do our part to be more sustainable. So just a little update about some of the executive order changes and how that will unfortunately increase our plastic production usage, especially in our national and federal buildings. So I do also just want to talk about some really good plastic pollution legislation in our neighboring Great Lakes states. So Illinois, right next to us, is the first Great Lakes state to actually reduce single-use plastic bottles in hotels, and that just passed August of last year. So in Illinois, law requires that hotels with 50 or more rooms eliminate the use of those small single-use plastic bottles containing personal care products, and that is you have to do that by July of this year. So by January of next year, all the hotels in Illinois are expected to make this transition. And this law really does serve as a model for the Great Lakes region to follow. And I bring it up for two reasons. Number one, of course, they're a Great Lakes state, and so they're our neighbors. But number two, most of the people who are coming to the Indiana Dunes National Park, or at least a really big chunk of them, about 60%, are from the state of Illinois. And so this, I think, will also affect our national park and Northwest Indiana region, especially when we have tourists from Illinois. So really, really good legislation. It's really great to see that our Great Lakes neighbors are thinking about how to reduce their plastic reduction, especially for the visitors when they're coming into the state. And so that's really, really good to hear. And hopefully we're able to make a similar legislation in Indiana. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the ways that individuals can reduce their plastic use. So, of course, there's a lot you can do. Number one, I think both Julie and Linda mentioned this, but weaning yourself off of single-use plastics yourself as an individual is a great idea. Also, purchasing items secondhand, such as from thrift stores, is really good. Buying in bulk and looking for eco-friendly packaging. So, for instance, like Costco, some stores like that don't actually give you plastic bags, right? They just let you kind of take it yourself. So that's really good. Also, supporting sustainable legislative efforts to reduce single-use plastics. So I just gave you an example of a state bill that Representative Arrington and Representative Boyd did introduce last session. So when you see legislative bills like that, especially at the State House, making sure to support that, to advocate for them is a really good idea as well. And I just want to talk a little bit about what we at Save the Dunes are doing to reduce plastic pollution. So last September, our organization embarked on an exciting community recycling project in partnership with Nextrex company. So the goal of this was to collect 1,000 pounds of plastic bags and films and keeping them out of landfills and green spaces. So with the overwhelming support for our project and our community members, we actually finished this project in just 9 months. It was supposed to be a whole year, but it only took 9 months. And so if you're interested in actually doing this project yourself, please let me know. Our communications manager, M, did a really great job. That's her on the right there, of collecting all the plastic bags. And actually, if you do collect 1,000 pounds of plastic bags, you get a recycled bench as a reward, and a recycled bench that we got from the company is actually in our pollinator garden out here. So a really good reward for collecting and recycling those plastic bags and films. So if you're interested in doing it yourself, I recommend either looking up the company or just reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with them. Another thing we do is working with partners, including Mermaid Straw, to host beach cleanup days and, of course, promote reusable water bottles, especially on our national park trails. This is something that we're really focusing on with some of the federal changes, which are affecting our staff numbers at the Indiana Dunes National Park, just making sure that they don't have to worry about going after people when they're going on trails and picking up plastic water bottles. So really reusing those water bottles or bringing a reusable water bottles when you're visiting our national park is a huge, huge help. So another way that we're helping reduce plastic pollution is specifically in the national park itself. So we got a National Parks Foundation funded project to create signage in the national park to promote the reduction of the amount of single-use plastics coming into our national park every single day. So we have an event at West Beach in July about recreating responsibly and leaving no trace. So when we say leave no trace, that means that when you go into a national park or really any recreational area, you take in whatever you take out whatever you put in. So don't leave any traces, don't leave any plastic, don't leave any garbage. When you're visiting these national parks, we want to make sure that they're beautiful and kept pristine, not only for the ecological health of it, but also just for visitorship as well. When people are coming in, we want to make sure that they want to visit the Indiana Dunes National Park repeatedly. Another thing is we will have a plastic-free fest in July of next year to promote sustainable efforts, hopefully in the national park. So look forward to that as well. And so I'm going to switch over to what you can do to help again. So another thing, of course, is to advocate for plastic pollution reduction. So as I mentioned, reaching out to your legislators and supporting some good state bills to promote plastic reduction sustainability. Particularly right now, the Indiana Dunes National Park really needs your help to help advocate for it and support it. So, if you are in the area or if you're coming to visit our national park, please consider volunteering directly with the national park. So, they have something every Monday called the Trash Truckers that go out and do beach cleanups and do trail cleanups as well. And that really helps keep our national park clean. Some of the recent federal changes resulted in reduced maintenance staff, especially during the peak seasons, which are still going on right now. So that's usually our summer and fall seasons are the most highly visited. So that includes trash maintenance and natural resources being reduced, unfortunately, during those months. So consider joining or helping your community sustainability efforts as well. So if you have a local sustainability committee, sustainability group, please consider joining them as well. And I just want to leave you with one last event. So, if you're thinking about how to get involved, there's actually an event that we're doing this upcoming weekend. We'd love to see you there. So, in celebration of Public Lands Day, which is coming up, we are partnering with Mermaid Straw for their last beach cleanup of the 2025 season. This is going to be on Saturday, September 27th from 9 to 11 at West Beach, which is in the Indiana Dunes National Park. And we're going to have some refreshments and cleanup supplies, of course, that we'll provide. So everything will be provided when you come. And a really good thing about it as well is that the day that we're going to do the cleanup is National Public Lands Day. So the entry to the national park is going to be free. So it's a completely free event. We'd love to see you there, helping us actually do the work, actually help clean up our beaches. So please let me know if you have any questions. But all the information is on our website. And I hope to see you all there. And the only other thing I would say is please follow along with our organization. If you haven't heard of us, if you have any questions about anything we're doing, particularly in the advocacy realm, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But we're on Instagram. We have a newsletter every single month. Our communications manager, M, sends out what we're doing in policy, conservation, and community engagement. And we're also on Facebook. So thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, that's my email. More than happy to answer anything. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Harshini. And just one question. Are you working as well with residents in the area? How do you engage them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say we are trying to do a lot more initiatives. And as I mentioned, we're doing like some beach cleanups and things like that. Um, when it comes to residents in the area, I would give an example of like Highland Neighbors for Sustainability. So those more kind of central community groups like that that are really focused on how to speak to their municipalities. We do partner with them a lot. We're also trying to do a lot more. We have a new hire coming that will do a lot more municipality level advocacy, and so we're definitely thinking about how to kind of do it more on a micro level. But and when it comes to my work, I usually do more the state and the more federal advocacy, but absolutely something that we're looking to improve on in the next couple of months.
Thank you, Harshini. And before maybe we can get into one question, I would like you, Dr. Peller, to just explain a little bit about the Plastic Reduction Alliance. There are some questions regarding the alliance. So,
Uh, yeah, I'm just going to share my screen again just to kind of finish up here. I think that Harshini offered some nice thoughts on where do we go from here. I get blamed for depressing people, so we have to end up on a positive tone. But before I do that, I just want to emphasize these are materials that we really have no viable solutions for. Our plastic waste is a true problem. Most of it goes in the landfill where it will outlive all of us many times over. And the producers of the waste have yet to be held accountable. So they just produce this material. They don't have to take any responsibility for all the waste. And as Linda mentioned, the efforts internationally have failed so far, and frankly, on our federal level as well. One of the things that we continue, those of us in this world, pushing for is what we call extended producer responsibility. That will require these producers to take responsibility. And so, since so many of them show up at these talks, and they push very hard against this. We can all play a role, as Linda and Harshini had mentioned, thinking about ways to reduce our own plastic footprint, if we want to call it. We do have some consumer strength and responsibility pushing back against this. And so maybe we could talk about that in a future webinar. And at the local level, though, we've decided we need to do something given what we understand and the fact that when I go out and talk to groups, people more inclined to recognize how bad of a problem this is and that we need to do things going forward. So we created the Plastic Reduction Alliance. So thank you, Maria, for asking about that. We're an organization committed to working on this problem, highlighting the latest research that we do. We are developing partnerships. We're developing programs and events to promote cleaner, healthier communities and for the reduction, especially of single-use plastic. And our website is just simply plasticreductionalliance.org. So just to quickly finish up here, we're raising awareness. You know, that's kind of one of our key things about single-use plastic and all these negative impacts. We're creating these partnerships, working with organizations. We're trying to connect more with local businesses to encourage alternatives to plastics. I mean, we were told at a meeting the other night, somebody had said that businesses can buy 5,000 single-use plastic bags for $12. We gotta get that information secondhand, but if it's even remotely close to that, the fact that a single-use plastic bag is way less than a penny these days, something's wrong there. And we have to remember that these are all from fossil fuels, and we just saw a huge kick and rise in fossil fuel subsidies at our federal level. To make these even cheaper. So it becomes harder and harder for businesses from an economic standpoint. I think from, the right thing standpoint, that's a different thing. So we want to engage local and state government to do kind of what Illinois is doing what New Jersey's doing in other states. So we're out to promote a cleaner and healthier environment, and we want to do this better together. So reach out to us if you're interested in connecting with us. I do this because I have grandchildren and I'm concerned about them. The benefits are many, and I know we're running out of time, so I'm just going to say thank you for your attention today. Really, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us today.
Thank you, Doctor. And just remember that we are recording this presentation, so you will receive the link. So if you want to share this presentation, this session, please feel free to do so. And thank you for joining us today. It was an incredible set of information and experiences that you share with us. We are grateful to our speakers for sharing their insights and to all of you for engaging in this important conversation. We saw in the chat, there were a lot of questions and idea sharing, so thank you very much. Tackling plastic waste requires not just better systems, but also a shift in how we think and act and collaborate, of course. So today's dialogue was a step forward on that journey. So thank you very much. And we are adding the survey as well. That survey will give us feedback on which information you would like to share or you would like to have in the future. So please take some minutes and fill the survey. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.